sometimes you learn some things when you get out of school that you wouldn't have learned when you were in school. And sometimes you're taught things about certain materials like books that are you're taught the wrong way about them. Case in point is Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. The book is often taught from a feminist perspective. It's not taught from an objective perspective where you can see the balance between Janie's relationships with men and the way she was taught how to relate to men by women. Um, Most of the literati and educated professors and teachers often tell you that Janie Crawford was a victim of the abuses of the black men in her life. However, they the gloss over how she was actually abused by white supremacy, one, and two, how she was miseducated by the black women in her life. And I'll get into this right now. Because in Their Eyes Were Watching God, what happens is professors never talk about how Nanny was the victim of a rape by a white man, and how her daughter Leafy was the victim of a rape by a white man, and how this sexual violence and sexual trauma led to them 2 generations learning how to become dysfunctional. And they don't talk about how this sexual violence by these white men, this white supremacist sexual violence, led to the Janie Crawford being raised with a set of dysfunctional values. This is never ever discussed in many classrooms, is never examined, and no one really wants to take a look at it because the black feminists, when they brought the book out in the 70s, all saw it as a book that promoted their ideas and values about black empowerment, about how the black woman was the victim of black male abuse, when it was never the case. It was really about white supremacy and the miseducated black females, 2 generations straight, miseducating this young woman to become dysfunctional. And they also don't talk about they don't ever discuss how Janie was the product of a female headed household. Um, Janie was raised in the house by her grandmother, who was a single woman, who is dealing with emotional and mental trauma from being sexually abused, from being raped, and because her mother ran away. Um, but she's raised by her grandmother to be, and her grandmother raises her with these twisted ideas about men, and these twisted and this idea and this she elevates her into this point of thinking that she's better than everybody else, that she's superior to everybody else, and that people are supposed to defer to her. This is where we really this is where she gets the arrogance and the entitlement mindset, where she thinks she can watch God. I mean, this if you really look at that statement, it shows how arrogant this young woman is. And because who are we? I mean, as God's creations, who are we to think that we can look up and watch God? It really shows how arrogant this woman is. How she has been raised with a real in this female-headed household with these entitlement issues and this sense of thinking that she's better than everybody else. It's a clear case of hubris to think that you can watch God when He actually looks down at you and sees how pathetic and stupid you are. And that's a real commentary on, I think, on black women that was made in the book, but nobody ever talks about that because the black feminists want to think about it as a book that's related to empowerment and strength and all this other silly feminist nonsense. And as the book progresses, we get into the whole um, um, it's a lot of misandry in here. So when she gets older, we get to this part where Johnny Taylor supposedly kisses her, and Nanny gets upset. But they never ever in public schools talk about in colleges about how this is related to her trauma of being raped and sexually abused, and that's never discussed. All we get is black woman is the mule of the world, which is another statement that is misinterpreted. The reason why, I think that really that Hurston was foreshadowing her comparing her to a mule because it was really about the way she was raised in that female-headed household, in the way that she was raised in dysfunction. And when you're raised in dysfunction in a female-headed household, the reason why she's calling her a mule is because she's going to be selfish, stubborn, and arrogant. That's what I think is what it foreshadows, because she was not raised properly. Because if you really look at it, she's not raised with in a normal household. She's raised in dysfunction, and what happens here is after she makes this statement that black woman is mule of the world, which is not true, which is really not true. We start to see where all these father issues and other issues come into play when it's time for Janie to get married. This is where when Nanny reveals her true character from all of the trauma, from all of her trauma and all of her daddy issues, when she literally pimps Janie out to Logan Killicks. People look at that as, the feminists look at it as Logan Killicks was a dirty old man, and yes, he was a dirty old man, but they never look at the other side of it, which is Nanny coming from that female-headed household. Nanny being a single mother, her daughter walking away, and then Janie being raised by this woman who is dysfunctional, who has not dealt with her sexual trauma and her rape and all this other horrible stuff has not been dealt with, and how she's passed this on, and how all this stuff comes together with the Logan Killicks, with her telling her to marry Logan Killicks, because literally she's pimped out. But the way they have it, he's a dirty old man. But it's not. It's if you look at it objectively, they were both doing things. And there's a point in the book where she says, when she's getting ready to marry, do you know anything about men? And she says, I don't know. Nanny says, I don't know anything about men. And that's a very telling point, because here you have this woman from this female-headed house, this leader, this matriarch, telling the granddaughter she knows nothing about men. She doesn't know how to have a relationship with men. But their idea of having a thing, the whole thing they were focused on was about Janie getting stuff. It was never about having a relationship with a man. It was literally prostitution. But the way the feminists presented it as, he's a dirty old man, he's a pervert, and yeah, he is a pervert. But on their side, they don't never talk about how Nanny pimps her out. And the whole thing is that the relationship was never meant to work, because Logan Killick was looking for a partner. He was looking for somebody to help him work on the farm. Yeah, he was a thirsty dude, but he was looking for somebody to help him work on the farm, help him build a business, help him build something. But he could not get that from Janie, because Janie was raised in dysfunction, and nobody ever talks about how the way she was raised, it had a huge impact on why her relationships never worked. Now, her relationship with Logan Killicks didn't work not only because he was a pervert, not only because he was a jerk, but because she was raised in a dysfunctional lifestyle. She was raised dysfunctional, and she's thinking that she's supposed to get all this stuff from this guy, because basically what's happening now after she was pimped out is she's learning how to become a gold digger, and the gold digger really just uses men as tools. And that's when we get to the part where then after she realizes she's only going to get a mule out of Logan Killicks, she becomes upset. And during this time, she's courting Joe Starks, and she's using Joe Starks personally, as I see it, as a tool to get away from Logan Killicks. Because people think of Joe Starks as this guy who's objectifying her. No, he's a simp. He's basically what I call Golden Age Captain Save-A-Ho. He's coming in to save. He, in his mind, he thinks he's going to save this beautiful light-skinned woman from this dirty old man. But no, he's being used by that beautiful light-skinned woman to get away from him. She's using him as a tool, and a lot of the professors never talk about that. A lot of the teachers never talk about. She's using him to get away from him. And what she does is she walks away from him. Because Joe Starks is a man, he's on his way. He's on his way. He's doing things. He's making progress, but he just lacks the social skills. And that's what simps do. They have no social skills and they have no standards. He didn't vet this woman. All he saw was light skin and pretty hair and all the other amenities, these superficial amenities these women have. But he did not see her character. And that's another big plot point in the book that people don't they gloss over, is that he was caught up in the beauty and the booty, but he didn't see what this woman is. A predator. She's a gold digger. She's been raised in a female headed household. She's been taught dysfunction, but he does not see this. All he sees is light skin and pretty hair. And when you see that, a lot of brothers fall for that game. And when she gets with Joe Stark, she walks away. She goes with him to Eatonville. And when Joe Starks gets to Eatonville, I mean, he takes her on a fancy train ride. He takes her on a horse and carriage. He basically does all the simp stuff. I mean, he does a lot of simp stuff. He does a lot of tricking. He does a lot of simping. And he takes her down to Eatonville, Florida. And when they get there, he thinks it's going to be this great, fancy black town. But what he finds is, a gutter full of dirty, no good niggers. And then he has to literally help build the town. He has to get the money and build the town up himself. And then he establishes a business, which is a post office, which at that time, in the early 20th century, early whatever this time, in 1800 something, 20th century, was a very, very big business. And then he elects himself as the mayor. But because Janie comes from the female-headed household, because she's raised in dysfunction, because she has learned dysfunctional values from her grandmother, she does not understand the role of the woman. She does not understand how to be a wife, and that there's a leadership that the man leads while the female supports the man. So she thinks she's being objectified, but what she doesn't understand is when you come out of like a lot of women who come out of female-headed households, they don't understand that there are roles that both men and women play. And the male usually is the leader, and as the mayor, he was the leader of the town. He needed someone to support him, but because he didn't understand, he had no standards, and he didn't vet this woman. He wound up with a partner who was working against him, and she's thinking, like in most of the book, she's thinking that this man is holding her back, that he's not doing right by her. When in actuality, he was doing right by her. He wanted a partner who would help him out. He wanted a partner who would help him build his business, who would help him build the town, who would help him establish wealth. And when women usually who from female don't understand that female-headed households don't understand how to be a partner. They don't understand how to work on a team. They think that everything is about them, and Janie thinks that everything is about her, everything revolves around her, everything has to be about her, and it's not. Nothing has to be about her. What he needed was a partner. He needed somebody to work in the back and to support him and to learn different things and learn how to be a woman. Because the role of the woman, a lot of women, that's what feminists do. They undervalue what it means to be a woman. That the woman's role is special. They don't think the woman's role is special. They think the woman's role is low grade. They think it's no good. They think it's horrible. And Janie is always outside. She's always looking at Joe Stark's role. She wants to take his role. She wants to be the leader of the relationship when she's not the leader, when she wasn't meant to be the leader of the relationship. Again, here's the hubris of the woman in the scheme of God's order. She wants to take his position. And she's sitting out there. She sees all these porch sitters, and she thinks that these guys are doing all this great stuff. She thinks that there's something to be out there, when she doesn't understand. These were the same trifling Negroes who weren't about anything and weren't doing anything with their lives. And then there was nothing out there for her, and she didn't understand that her husband was trying to protect her, and she didn't understand that there was a role that she could have played, and she could have become a community leader if she understood the traditional role and roles of women. There's a lot of power in the position of a woman, but a lot of women are so busy trying to do them, like Janie today, are trying to do the men's role, that they don't see the power in their own position, and they wind up losing so much because they just so busy looking at this man's position, thinking it's important when there are so many great things. Now all of this comes to a head, and when she finally gets on that perch with those trifling niggers, and she thinks she's doing something, and he's trying to get her back into the house. And this, I think, is like a metaphor for like how the woman is out of position. And then she tries to emasculate him with what the feminists try to say is an emasculating thing, saying inside your drawers is the change of life. When in actuality, it's not. If you look at it, inside of a man's drawers is not the change of life for a man, because a man produces sperm. But if he inside of it does change. I mean, let me rephrase that. It is the change of life for a woman. It's not a change of life for a man. It's not emasculating for a man, but it's a change for a woman, because when a man has sex with a woman, he injects sperm into her body, and that changes her life. When she becomes pregnant, it changes her life. It doesn't change his life in any way, except for being a father, but it changes her life, because when she becomes pregnant, her body changes, her life changes. That means that she can't do the things that she used to do. She can't go out here and be the pretty light-skinned chick like Janie is. She can't be that. What she has to do now is become a mother. And now here's another point. Janie didn't understand the roles of marriage in the early 20th century, late 19th century. The roles of marriage was that the woman, her job, and the man took care of the woman all so that he could have an heir. He married her. It was a business deal. In exchange for being taken care of, the man would give her. She was to produce an heir for him, usually a son, who would inherit the wealth and pass the business on to the next generation. But again, coming out of the female-headed household, she does not, and is raised in dysfunction. She does not understand the role of the woman in a marriage. In a marriage, one of the tenets of marriage is to produce an heir. The woman's job is to get pregnant with the man's child, and produce him an heir, preferably a son, because in the early 20th century, late 19th century, you wanted to have a son because they were the only people who could inherit property and get into contracts. I mean, we're talking about, and even with the constitutional amendments like this women's suffrage and all that other stuff, you still had to go through. The primary leader was the man, and Janie does not understand this. She thinks that she's supposed to be the leader, and she thinks that it's the change of life is supposed to emasculate him, and it's not emasculating to him. And then in the book, that's another misinterpreted piece, that it's supposed to be the change of his life. It's the change of her life, because her life is going to change dramatically if she becomes pregnant with this man's kid. And moving on, after she so-called emasculates him, and then she breaks up, and then they break up, Joe Stark supposedly dies because of this emasculation, which I don't believe he died from the emasculation. I really believe he died from cancer, from the cigars that he was smoking, because Joe Stark was a big-time simp. He was a big-time perpetrator. He liked to dress up, and he was very pretentious. And that's another part that they gloss over. I really do believe he died from cancer. I do want him smoking all the cigars. He dies. Janie gets the post office. She gets all of his business. She gets his general store. She gets the trappings of wealth. And as she gets this wealth, she doesn't know what to do with it. She's confused. She's lost. Like most women from female-headed households usually are, because they don't have a father there to model leadership to them and to show them how things are done. And And without that father there, they don't understand how business is done. Now, Janie gets some suitors, some men to court her. These are well-to-do men, well-established men, well-educated black men. She doesn't want any of those black men. Why? Because these are men who will see through her and see through her scam. Because the gold digger, they don't want anybody to know that they don't know anything except light skin and long pretty hair. That's all Janie has. That's all Janie had was light skin, long pretty hair, her looks, and that's the deflection she used. And when she had to, and when she knew that she had to deal with real men who knew how to do business, they would take her wealth away from her and use it in ways she didn't like, and they would try to, and they would and they would put her under, they would subjugate her under the order of patriarchy, a male leadership, and she did not want to be put under male leadership. So she gets involved with Virgil Tea Cake Woods out of all the men, and that's supposed to be the talk of the town. And what this is another case of Janie being the predator, the gold digger. She's trying to use that. She's using another man as a tool to keep her wealth, keep her business and everything, and keep everything under her control. We think that she's found, like the feminists like to tell us, she's found this love and she's found happiness, and that's another deflection. What she's found is she's found another simp, a younger man, because she's 40 years old now. She's found another simp that she can control. And the only reason why she loves this man is because she loves the power and control she has over a man. Literally, this is like, I'd say in a way, her mother and grandmother, in a way, her getting revenge on revenge on the men who supposedly raped her. But here's where the problem lies. She thinks it's the black men, like a lot of feminists think this is black men that did her wrong. No, it was, and it would really, in the end, it was the white men who did her grandmother and mother wrong. And now they're taking it out on the black man and trying to take power and control this way. And this is why she's trying to take power and control over this man. Because T-Cake is a drifter. He's a bum. He's basically like the thugs and gangsters and other assorted dudes that we see today. He thinks and they think that she loves him and all this stuff and it's romance. It's like, no. This is just her getting control over this guy, and her taking control, and her totally emasculating this man. Because over time, this guy totally gets. He thinks that he's in charge. He thinks he's doing things, but really, he's up under her. He's under subjugation, and it's the relationship with T-Cake that all the feminists think is a great relationship. Really shows us one tenet of why matriarchy doesn't work. Because if we look at the Joe Starks relationship, she had wealth, she was well taken care of, and she lived well for 20 years. But under the control of matriarchy, when Janie becomes the matriarch and controls everything, she comes to ruin in 18 months. I mean, I want you to ruminate on that. Under a male leadership, black male leadership, she was doing well for 20 years. But under matriarchal rule, under her own matriarchal power, she's broke in 18 months. Think about that. Think about the parallels between that and today's feminists, black women. Think about today's black women and the black community, and how over the course of 40 years, we've gone from, black families being functional, black families doing well, to this utter chaos we have right now. How we have most people, a lot of black people on public assistance, how we have hood rats destroying the black community, how the community has come to ruin because of matriarchal leadership. Now, unable to manage the post office and manage the wealth that she was given, and Janie sells the general store. This is the point Oprah Winfrey omitted in her movie, the adaptation of the book. She sells the general store. She heads down to another part of Florida in the muck to pick beans. Now think about this. Is another point. This is where we see the emotional ability, why matriarchy doesn't work, because this is where Janie thinks on emotion instead of logic. here you are with the tools to be wealthy for the rest of your life and to take care of yourself for the rest of your life, but you decide to sell it to go on a crazy just to go away with this man so that he can feel like a man. And again, this is another point that I also got from the book. Janie wants Tea Cake to be a man, not on his terms, not on God's terms, but on her terms. And this is another point in the black community we never ever explore. That a lot of black women want the man to be a man on her terms. And that's the same thing in this book. She wanted Tea Cake to be a man on her terms. She wanted to be able, so because Tea Cake was probably feeling weak and emasculated, because if she gave him a job in the post office and the general store, he would feel emasculated, he'll feel weak, he'll feel like he's not a man. But she takes him out there so he can feel like a man. But a man on her terms, not a man on his terms, not a man, because he really wasn't a man, he was really weak. And that's one of the reasons why she picked him, because he was the weakest of all the men. He was the easiest to control, he was the easiest to manipulate. And they go out into this muck, and TK goes back to his usual gambling ways and his hustling ways, because he's just a thug, just like the thug guys. He goes on his way, and everything comes to a end. He beats her too, just like the other men supposedly beat her. And in the muck they're picking beans and they're supposedly happy, and it really is. It's ridiculous. I mean, it really shows you what happens when black matriarchy comes to power. And eventually there's this hurricane which happens, and in the hurricane they wind up in a bad situation. TK gets bit by a dog, and what I really think the hurricane represents is God showing his power. And the bite of the dog, we think it's rabies. The feminists tell you, oh, he's got rabies. But really, it's like they say that he's sick. But I think that it's not that he's sick. I think that he wakes up. And then we get this whole thing where he's rabid and crazy and out of control. And again, I think it's about him learning to become, it's like a metaphor for him being a man. And him trying to, and in that time, he's trying to take control and he's trying to take charge. And it really is that he's a male who does not understand his role as a man. He doesn't understand how to be a man. And it seems like he's wild and out of control, and he's got this gun. And the gun, I think it's supposed to represent the penis. And he's got a pistol, and she's got a shotgun. And then eventually it leads to a big confrontation where she takes a shotgun and shoots him. And I think that's a thing where they talk about how he's emasculated. How she took his male power, she took power over this man and killed him. Because he's trying to take control. I mean, he's trying to take his natural God-given role as a male leader. But what happens is she takes power over him and destroys him. And then sooner or later, and then after she kills him, they go to court. And the white supremacist court, and then again, this is another point in the book they never explore. The white supremacist court system, it's an all-white jury, and all white people support it, and then she gets acquitted. They go to trial, she's acquitted, and it's really the whole trial component is really, it's a real statement on the justice system and how it relates to black men and how to black women and white supremacy, and how literally, like if you compare it to today, black woman can get away, if she wants to destroy a black man, she can pretty much do it. I mean, Janie pretty much kills Tea Cake, and it shows how little value the life of a black man has in American society, that literally the white people all come out. Now, the people in the black community in the book say that this is a travesty, this is sick, that she murdered this man and that she got away with it. But because she's like an agent of white supremacy, the white people literally let her get away with it. And towards the end of the book, we're told that, she gives him a big elaborate funeral, but there's a plot hole here. I thought all the money was gambled away. TK gambled all the money away that she had gained. All of a sudden, she has this money for this lavish funeral, which tells me there's something wrong here. And then after all this, after she has the lavish funeral, she's supposedly putting on these overalls and walking back to Eatonville, which really, if you really look at it, she's manipulating people again. She's she's playing the victim. She's not humiliated or defeated like the feminists want you to believe. They want you to believe, oh, she's walking into town, she's putting on the pants, and she's taking on the man's role. What she's trying to do is like most gold diggers, after they squander their fortunes, is they're trying to they put on this victim, the sad face, the sad sack, um, look and behavior to make you think that they're a victim when they're not a victim. What they are what they are predators using the victim role to get you to feel sympathy for them, to make you feel sorry for them, and sadly, the people of Eatonville fell for the game at the beginning of the book and at the end of the book. That all this nonsense about symbolism and all this nonsense about it being about her being humiliated. No, she knew what she was doing. Jenny Crawford was a predator, and people don't understand because she comes from. They didn't understand that she's a predator who has learned how to use people as tools from her mother, from her grandmother, and her coming out of a female-headed household. She was a master predator. She was dysfunctional. I'd actually say Janie was the first hood rat. I mean, if you look at the book and you get past all the language and all the dialect, which is another deflection Hurston uses, you can see that she was the first hood rat. She is the basic model for the hood rat. I mean, every one of her behaviors from first page to last is hood rat behavior. And if you can't, it's like the hood rat is a predator. She uses people to get ahead. She takes advantage. She uses people as tools. And Janie uses all three black men as tools. She uses them as tools. She manipulates them. She takes advantage of them. She tries to control them. And when she can't get control, she uses one man, like in the case of Joe Starks with Logan Killicks, to get away from another man. And I think she was trying to get to one of those porch sitters, which were trifling Negroes, to use them to eliminate Joe Starks. But then, she had her alleged emasculation of him, which led to the breakup of the relationship. So she didn't need to use them as tools. So then she uses Tea Cake to get away from Eatonville so that they won't find out the truth about her. So she uses men as tools. She uses them all as a way to get ahead, as a way to keep going and keep getting whatever she wants. And the way colleges and high schools tell you, they make it like Janie's the victim, when in actuality she's a deadly predator. She's basically the originator of the blueprint for the hood rat. She's the originator of the dysfunctional black woman. Now, a lot of people don't look at it that way, but this is just my perspective. I'm just a freelance writer, Monroe College graduate, I'm not a big time guy, but this is how I interpret the book. This is what I got out of it. This is my observation from what I've read and what I've looked at and what I've studied. And people, you really need to take another look at this book. You need to stop listening to the colleges and the high schools teachers. They're coming from a feminist perspective, which is rooted in people like Alice Walker, who is a real nut job. She's the one who brought this book back. She's the one who gave us this analysis. She's the one who gave us this interpretation of the book. It's from black feminists, and you really have to take a look at it from an objective perspective where you can see that this woman comes from a female-headed household. She's raised by people with an entitled mindset. She's extremely arrogant. She's extreme dangerous. She was extremely dangerous. She was a gold digger. And she was not the victim that people in the illiterati, these college professors, these feminists and manginas want you to believe that she was. She was really, really a danger. She was the dangerous predator to black men. The black men in her lives, just like the hood rat today, is a dangerous predator in our lives. Now, I recommend that you still even though I don't agree with this book, some feminist views, the feminist way of interpreting it, I really want you to take a look at this book and take a look at it from a different perspective, because it's something that black men especially, you really need to take a look at this book, because it'll really open your eyes to how black women today, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, have learned to become predators and gold diggers. Because Jenny Crawford was literally the, I'd say, the prototype for the gold digger. She's the prototype for the hood rat. Now, with that being said, I'm going to wrap this video up. Thank you very much. Hit comment, rate, and subscribe.